welcome to the MCTV Weekly News Update. I'm Allie Reed.
And I'm Jennifer Keene. We have a lot in store for you today, so let's jump right into today's top story. On Sunday, February 10th, passengers aboard the Carnival Triumph cruise ship were returning home from their trip to Cozumel, Mexico, when disaster struck. A fire broke out in the engine room and all power on the ship was lost. The deck served as a campground as tents were pitched due to extreme heat and no air conditioning. Passengers waited hours in line to eat, but without power, all of the food, including the steak and lobster served in the ship's various restaurants, rotted. After a while, the only things left were stale vegetables. With little electricity, only one working outlet was discovered and became a huge charging station for electronics aboard the ship. An even greater problem, beyond the lack of food and power, was the sewage. Each time the wind blew, the ship tilted, causing toilets to overflow and seep into the halls through floors to the levels below. Biohazard bags were passed out to each passenger, leaving the crew members to clean up the used ones. According to the passengers, it was the crew who made the horrible experience slightly bearable. Beer and wine was free to everyone, and each crew member was described as always having a smile on his face. Employees received full compensation and will return to work after a few days off. With the help of tugboats and a channel guide boat, the cruise ship returned to Alabama this past Thursday.
As things fell apart out at sea, something bigger was falling to pieces in Russia as a meteor entered the Earth's atmosphere. But what was in that meteor that exploded spectacularly over Russia's Ural region this weekend? Radioactive spores, tiny Martians, kryptonite? Nope, just rock and a bit of iron, according to Russian scientists who tracked fragments of the meteor to a frozen surface of Lake Shabarkal. Scientists from Ural's Federal University found 53 small meteorites on the surface of the lake and believe a larger fragment is underwater, said Viktor Gorkovsky, the scientist who led the effort. The fragments point to a rocky meteor with about 10% iron mixed in, Gorkovsky told CNN. The meteor exploded on Friday in the area near Chelyabinsk, leaving behind nothing but meteorites, thousands of broken windows, and some pretty spectacular video of it streaking across the sky before exploding in a noisy, luminous fireball. The explosion startled residents going about their morning business and damaged more than 4,000 buildings, mostly apartments. One woman was flown to Moscow for treatment for a spinal injury, state media reported. About 50 people remained hospitalized over the weekend. Local officials have estimated the damage at more than 1 billion rubles, or $33 million, RIA Novosti said. Chelyabinsk Governor Mikhail Yurovich promised compensation to all those affected. The official ITAR TASS news agency stated. The U.S. space agency NASA said the meteor released nearly 500 kilotons of energy, about 33 times more than the nuclear bomb the United States dropped on Hiroshima, Japan in 1945. There were some hard words in that one, can I just say.
That was crazy.
Yeah, I remember going to Manhattan the day that the meteor was supposed to be in Earth's atmosphere, and my dad was like, well, if I don't talk to you after 2, have a nice rest of your life. Like, oh, good.
It sounded like something from a movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
While Russia works to repair damage from the physical shock waves of a meteor, the government of Singapore is facing a different wave of energy coming from its citizens. Public protesters in Singapore are unusual, but a controversial plan to increase immigration has brought people to the streets. The reason? It says the people of Singapore aren't having enough children. Liz Nieslos reports.
Let's hear some noise, Singaporeans.
A rare public protest in Singapore.
What rubbish is this?
Singaporeans outraged over government proposals to allow the number of immigrants to rise as much as 30% over the next decade and a half, largely in the name of economic growth.
This strategy of depending on foreign workers coming in is not the correct strategy.
These protesters say it's not a fear of foreigners, but a fear of losing jobs, a fear of overcrowding, and the fear that Singaporeans will become a minority in their own country.
But the government says Singaporeans aren't having enough babies to grow the economy and stay ahead of other Asian cities. The high cost of living is one of the main reasons couples say they aren't having babies.
Financially, we need to be stable. We need to feel safe before we have such commitments and such obligations. Yeah, so we prefer to accumulate our wealth, earn more money first before we start to have more family planning.
This government-supported group urges couples not to wait too long to try to have children.
We are really suffering from a lack of children in Singapore, and we want young couples to really think about desiring, to have children and to understand that children really do bring a lot of joy to their life.
New financial incentives are being offered to boost the baby making, but critics call this a warm-over of a formula that hasn't worked. Ang Miao Kim is expecting her second child and says 2 is the financial limit.
A lot of my generation, I've heard they wanted like maybe 1 or 2. Some don't want it because it's a different lifestyle. They don't really want to have children.
It's become a freer society. It's become more experimental. Women have changed considerably compared to the older generation, and the value placed on having a child has completely changed.
Singaporeans may not want to fill their ranks with foreigners, but convincing them to have more babies will be an uphill climb. Liz Nisla, CNN, Singapore.
I think that's incredible, because you look at places like China where they're trying to cut down on their population, like 1 kid, and if not, you get like sold over here, and Angelina Jolie is your mother. But they're trying to increase.
Absolutely, that's really interesting. Usually you see the reverse effects.
Yeah, like take some of our babies. We don't need that many.
Exactly.
The government of Singapore may want to control child population, but how would you like to control your child's behavior? Turns out changing what they watch on TV may be the place to start. In today's Health Minute, Holly Furfer tells us about a study that says positive messages in television shows impact how children behave.
Changing what your children watch on TV may change their behavior, according to a study in the journal Pediatrics. Researchers found that when preschoolers watched shows that stressed compassion and cooperation, they tended to act more that way themselves. When they saw movies or television shows containing violent scenes, they became more aggressive. The scientists assigned about 600 families to one of 2 groups. Parents in the first group were encouraged to replace the violent shows their children watched with educational programming. Adults were also encouraged to watch TV with their children. The second group did not change their viewing habits. After a year, the researchers found that preschoolers who watched less violent and more child-appropriate programming scored better on tests that measured cooperation and willingness to share. They had fewer incidents of aggressive behavior. Preschool children in America watch an average of 4.5 hours of programming a day. Experts hope this study will encourage parents to be selective when they turn the TV on for their preschoolers, or change the channel when necessary to offer their children programming that fosters cooperation instead of aggression. For today's Health Minute, I'm Holly Furfer.
Speaking of misbehaved children, a 10-year-old was found wandering around a Florida neighborhood naked and drunk. Now police are investigating this as a case of suspected child abuse. Carson Chambers has more.
Even stand. He was just, naked.
Amanda Roche is a mom.
And I'm like, come in the house, baby. And I went and got some of my son's clothes.
A 10-year-old neighbor really needed her mom's skills.
They had come across him, going up and down, naked, completely naked. No underwear, no socks, nothing.
2 neighbors walking their dog came across the 10-year-old wandering this Spring Hill neighborhood without a stitch of clothing, in a state no child should ever experience.
He was so intoxicated that he didn't realize he had no clothes on.
The boy's caretaker, Nidra Bird, was intoxicated too, according to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, and passed out in her home across the street with a friend.
The juvenile said that the caregiver provided the brandy.
When deputies arrived, they say they found a half-empty bottle of Christian Brothers brandy sitting on her counter and took the 4th grader to the hospital.
And they went ahead and did a blood alcohol, which came out at .108, which an adult would be considered impaired driving at .08.
Amanda Roche is still shaken up. Most moms would be.
How do you not know your child is missing? And drunk and missing, wandering down a dark road in the cold. I don't understand.
I've never heard anything like that. That is just a parenting fail right there.
I mean, It's funny because there was a story not too long ago that we actually did on one of these shows about kids learning how to extract alcohol from hand sanitizer.
Oh, wow.
And their YouTube tutorials, don't go out and look, their YouTube tutorials, and kids, like teenagers, are getting their hands on hand sanitizer and just getting drunk. So who knows, maybe that's where the alcohol came from.
That makes me kind of nervous.
A little bit.
Yeah.
There could be a new pope sooner than expected. CNN reports that the conclave to elect a new pope could begin sooner than March 15th, the date originally expected. Vatican spokesperson Father Federico Lombardi suggests that because Pope Benedict has resigned rather than died, the cardinals have the option of arriving in Rome shortly after February 28th, beginning the conclave earlier. He states that, quote, the decision may not come until after Benedict's departure and lies in the hands of the cardinals. Benedict's resignation is the first in almost 600 years, causing much confusion as the Vatican tries to work out a new protocol for how the process of choosing a new pope should proceed. Although Benedict will not be involved in choosing his new successor, his influence will be seen considering the appointed 67 of the 117 cardinals that make up the conclave were from him. The pontiff will hold a final audience in St. Peter's Square on February 27th, but there will not be a formal ceremony marking his departure. The last pope to resign was Pope Gregory VII, who quit in 1415 to end a civil war within the church when 3 men claimed to be the pope.
The entertainment world is bustling with breaking news. Forrest Whitaker has an unwelcome encounter at a New York deli, and moviegoers choose Die Hard for Valentine's Day. Christina Muchler has much more in today's Hollywood Minute.
Forrest Whitaker was falsely accused of shoplifting at a Manhattan deli Friday. TMZ first reported the incident. Witnesses said the actor was frisked in front of other customers, but the search turned up nothing. His publicist called it upsetting and inappropriate, saying Whitaker did nothing more than walk into the deli. She said he did not alert authorities over the incident because the deli employee feared for his job. Action and comedy beat romance at the movies on Valentine's Day weekend. A Good Day to Die Hard topped the box office with $25 million in ticket sales. The film is the 5th installment in the Die Hard franchise. Identity Thieves, starring Melissa McCarthy and Jason Bateman, came in second, pulling in $23.4 million. And Safe Haven, based on the novel by Nicholas Sparks, rounded out the top 3 with $21.4 million in ticket sales. For Hollywood Minute, I'm Christina Muchler.
As everyone heads to the movies to check out the latest films, we've got your what to wear weather worries. Here with the highs and lows report is Caitlyn Flynn.
Thanks, Allie. Well, it has been a much quieter week in the world of weather after Nemo dumped record-setting amounts of snow all over the Northeast. This past week made for much milder weather conditions, and we saw temperatures reach as high as the low 50s, which is unseasonably warm weather for this time of year. But don't unpack those spring clothes just yet. Expect temperatures for this coming week to hover around the mid-30s. Tonight's forecast calls for a 70% chance of light rain and a low of 23. So if you're heading out tonight, don't forget your heavy jacket and umbrella. Tomorrow has a chance of flurries around midday and a high of 33 degrees. Also, expect high winds to continue until Thursday, ranging from 13 to 19 miles per hour. Hold on to your hats, Marist. The next chance of snow comes this weekend with a chance of rain and snow showers beginning Saturday night and continuing into Sunday afternoon. Taking a look at the national weather forecast, Winter Storm Plato left Western Virginia and North Carolina with up to 6 inches this past Sunday. South Carolina received up to 4 inches, and snow fell as far south as Charleston, South Carolina. In the Midwest, a lake effect snow brought Michigan snow totals of 6 to 12 inches, while Kansas, Missouri, and Ohio are experiencing much milder weather with highs in the mid-50s. That's all I have for you tonight. Here with your weekly highs and lows report, I'm Caitlyn Flynn.
I cannot believe the weather we had this past week. Like,
it's been all over the place.
The storm, I went home and I live in Connecticut. It took us 9 hours to get out of my driveway. 2 snowblowers, 1 person shoveling, and it took 9 hours. We got 36 inches in Bristol. I couldn't even.
I'm next door in Sellington, and my parents sent me pictures, and I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Not in New England, at least.
It was
That's crazy.
over my car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got a startup idea? No need to move west. This new trend is making the most of wherever you are to create your own tech hub. Can Kaifa takes a look at one growing community on this week's Clicked In.
If the importance of tech to the economy needed a further boost, it got it during President Obama's State of the Union address.
A once shuttered warehouse is now a state-of-the-art lab where new workers are mastering the 3D printing that has the potential to revolutionize the way we make almost everything.
The traditional thinking has been if you want to be the next Apple, Facebook, or Google, you have to take your idea west. The new thinking, not necessarily so.
You see the light bulb go on, that no longer do we have to say to ourselves, Silicon Valley is the only place I can go if I have a startup dream.
And that's one of the principles behind 1776, which will soon occupy this space in downtown Washington, D.C., one example of a tech hub far from Silicon Valley.
We talk about being founded by founders, and every city in America really has a core strength of having been built largely by entrepreneurs.
The goal, bringing young companies together in a campus of sorts, creating a community among them, and helping them find ways to maximize the city around them, rather than leave home base.
Silicon Valley has some awesome assets that are really unique to that ecosystem. We have assets here in DC that are unique to our ecosystem, and it's all about how do we build a startup community that derives from those assets.
It's a concept budding entrepreneurs can apply in any city. I'm Karen Kaifa, and you're now Clicked In.
Things are not so good for a man once known to rise above his circumstances. We are getting new details concerning the Valentine's Day shooting of model Riva Steenkamp, girlfriend of Olympic Blade Runner Oscar Pistorius. South African authorities have charged Pistorius with murdering Steenkamp. Now, an official familiar with the case has disclosed new information about the shooting. CNN Robin Curnow has the latest.
There's been so much speculation, rumor, innuendo, guesswork about what exactly happened early on Valentine's Day in Oscar Pistorius' house when his girlfriend was shot dead. An official now close to the investigation is telling us that she was there to spend the night. They found her overnight bag and her iPad. They're also telling us that she was shot 4 times through a closed bathroom door, and that afterwards Oscar Pistorius carried her down the stairs and that she was still alive at that point. Now, more details will no doubt emerge in court. Oscar is appearing before a magistrate on Tuesday for a bail hearing. Unclear just how strong the state's case is against Pistorius, but they seemed pretty confident last week, saying that they would try and press ahead with premeditated murder charges. Oscar and his family have issued statements saying they strongly refute these murder charges. Now, what about Riva's family? Well, they've been talking to the newspapers for the first time. Her mother saying, "My baby loved like no one else." She too, like most of South Africa, is asking why, what drove him to do this, what was the motive. No explanation on that so far. And as for the family, they say goodbye to her on Tuesday, while Oscar faces that magistrate.
I'm actually really disappointed about this story. I actually wrote about this man in an essay fall semester about how much of an inspiration he was, and now the story's coming out.
Well, yeah, I mean, to get over everything that he has gotten over, like no legs, being in the Olympics, everything like that, like, and to just go out on such a horrible note.
Yeah, it's sad that that has to overshadow everything. They call him Prisoner X. Media reports have described him as a man who hanged himself in an Israeli prison cell, but details about what happened to him and why have long been hard to come by. The case, shrouded in mystery, sparked a government gag order that for 2 years stopped local journalists in Israel from telling his story. According to local media reports, 4 years Israeli government officials repeatedly declined to comment on the prisoner's death, which was first reported by the Ynet News website in 2010. Now, a new report about the man many in the media have dubbed Prisoner X, because his name was never revealed, is sparking widespread debate in Israel over government censorship and about the country's prison system. According to an investigative report this week From the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which did not disclose its sources, prisoner X was a dual citizen of Australia and Israel and was recruited to join Israel's Mossad spy agency. The report identified him as Ben Zygir, alleging he was detained in 2010. Details about why he was reportedly held in high-security prison outside Tel Aviv and what led to his death remain unclear. According to the ABC report, foreign correspondent Trevor Borman said that, quote, "The case is regarded as one of the most sensitive secrets of Israel's intelligence community, with the government going to extraordinary lengths to stifle media coverage and gag attempts by human rights organizations to expose the situation." Several prominent Israeli media organizations wrote stories about the Australian report, but then were asked to remove stories about it from the websites by the government censors. According to Israel's Haaretz newspaper and an editor to which CNN spoke.
Our last story for you tonight tells the tale of a woman finally freed from her own country. Yoani Sanchez, a Cuban blogger and fierce critic of the governments of Raul and Fidel Castro, on Sunday embarked on a long-denied trip abroad. According to Sanchez, she has been repeatedly refusing an exit permit for years because of her high-profile opposition to the government. In January, Cuba ended its unpopular policy of requiring that citizens obtain a letter of invitation and an exit permit before leaving the country. Descendants said the policy was used to punish them for their anti-government advocacy. While other government critics have left the country under the new law, Sanchez is the highest profile figure in the descendant community to test the easing of the restrictions. Cuba still prohibits the travel of some officials, sports stars, and citizens who travel abroad, it says would harm the public interest. A handful of other descendants so far have reported that they were informed by government officials that they would be barred from leaving the country. Sanchez says she planned an 80-day tour of some 10 countries, including Brazil, Mexico, and the United States. Flanked by international news media, Sanchez quickly checked into her flight to Brazil via Panama on Sunday and passed through an immigration checkpoint at Havana's Jose Marti Airport. Her new ability to travel, she told CNN, would not temper her criticisms of life in Cuba. She said, quote, "This may be my last trip. I am not going to moderate my opinion so I can leave again. If they are counting on my silence or less criticism, they can forget about it."
Good for her.
Yeah, good for her.
I think that's crazy that a country would not want you to leave if you're talking.
Well, I mean, you look at Cuba and how crazy they are. I mean, that's
scary.
why they all swim to America.
Yeah, that's scary that you can't leave somewhere that you don't like.
I don't even know.
Well, that looks like that's all we have for you today. I'm Jennifer Keene.
And I'm Allie Reed. Thanks for stopping by.